Welcome everybody to the Contextual Christian Church Bible Study, where today we're going to read 2 Chronicles chapter 14, verse 13 to chapter 15, verse 9. I'm going to pray it in. Everybody bow your heads. Father, thank you for everybody being a part of the Bible study today as we're going to continue getting into Asah. So far, from the reminders that we got of him, this is a pretty solid guy. We got great lessons from our last Bible study, and we'll plan to get even more lessons for this one. In Jesus' name, amen. Uh-oh. Did y'all hear me that whole time?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'm just waiting on Matt to get back. I wonder what happened. Let me say something. Uh-oh. I think I might need to I might need to call Matt. Give me a second, y'all. Say something.
All right. Can everybody hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Yeah. All right. I apologize for everybody. The company called right in the middle. I have a let them know. Look, you can text me at this time. You cannot call me at this time. He had forgotten that I told him supposedly. So next time I'll ignore it. But anyways, so last time what we had read through, we had from verse 21, the very last couple verses of chapter 13, all the way through to chapter 14, verse 12. And what we really had got into was first off, and everything's kind of small portions, but we had where Abia, that over time he had become really strong. And it points out how his life had ended. Like he had 14 wives, he had 22 sons, 16 daughters. And then the same thing we've heard so many times where all his stuff that happened, that it was written in another book. So we have the parts that's necessary, not the parts that are not. Then we got to Asa, his son, who had taken over after he had passed. And Asa had put God first, so much so that he had 10 years of straight quiet. But of course, because we're reading this last time, we had to bring up the fact of the false doctrine that just because God told them that means that your life will be peaceful if you 100% follow God. As a matter of fact, Jesus himself said a man is not above his master, and that if he had problems, we will, because the world hated him. And unless we were of the world is going to hate us too. So we will have problems at times in this life if we're trying to follow God according to what God has called for us. But back to the main focal point of what we read about last time with Asa, how he had tore down their false churches, tore down their idols. He was putting God first in a multitude of ways. And then there was a point where Asa had an army, and there was another army that was coming against him from the Ethiopians and where is it? And the people from Zerah. And they had 1,300,000 chariots. I mean, they had 1,000,000 people and 300 chariots. So when they set up to war, we saw where Asa cried out to God, asking him to help and telling him, "You've already shown us that it ain't nothing to you. It ain't nothing but a thing." Anyways, it ain't nothing to you to be helping us, whether we have a little bit of people or a lot of people. It makes no difference. So we're just asking that you help us so that it doesn't have even any man prevailing against you. So then in verse 12, at the last thing that we read, was where God had smote the Ethiopians before Asa and before Judah, and the Ethiopians fled. So the last thing that we had was after Asa had cried out to God for help, we had where the people had saw him basically as God took care of business for him. And it go to show, as God did promise to the children of Israel at that time frame, that he would be there for them. But never make that mistake. Just because God had promised to them in that moment that they would, does not mean that that promise goes to us today. As I said, what brought up what Jesus himself had said about how it's going to be for us in today's age from the New Testament on. Now, I'll go ahead and switch it to the first section for today's reading so that Charles can read.
All right, I'll be reading Second Chronicles chapter 14, verse 13 to chapter 15, verse 2. I'm going to give it a couple seconds. Verse 13. And Asa and the people that were with him pursued them unto Gerar, and the Ethiopians were overthrown, that they could not recover themselves, for they were destroyed before the Lord and before his host. And they carried away very much spoil, and they smote all the cities round about Gerar, for the fear of the Lord came upon them, and they spoiled all the cities, for there was exceeding much spoil in them. They smote all the they smote also the tents of cattle, and carried away sheep and camels in abundance, and returned to Jerusalem. And the Spirit of God came upon Zariah, the son of Oded, Oded, and he went out to meet Asa, and said unto him, Hear ye me, Asa, and all Judah and Benjamin. The Lord is with you, while ye be with him, and if ye seek him, he will be found of you. But if ye forsake him, he will forsake you. All right, let me go back to the previous. So, chapter 14, toward the end of it, 13, 14, 15, we got Asa chasing after the Ethiopians all the way to Gerar, destroying them so they couldn't recover. Um, Let me reread something real quick.
On a separate note, good job on the name. I was about to correct you, but I would have been wrong.
I don't know which name you're talking about.
Gerar.
Oh, okay.
I would have pronounced it from normally in Hebrew, Garar. Like have more emphasis on the R starting, the RAR, instead of air R. But you were
Oh, you
actually
saw the
correct when
phonetic?
going to the phonetic. Yeah. So good
Yeah,
job on that.
I saw the phonetic too.
Oh, never mind. I take it
Um,
back. That's cheating.
you
Go
would take that back.
ahead.
And after destroying the Ethiopians and chasing them around, it brought up in verse 14, 13, and 14 about the spoil. They spoiled them, spoiled all the cities, took much spoil. Spoil.
What is okay? Good.
Another way we could explain that is what what's left over when the losing side loses their battle or loses their war. So if Thomas and his family went to war with Charles and Charles's family, and he slaughtered Charles's family, and the rest of them just ran away and never came back, Thomas is looking around like, man, they left gold, camels, sheep, cattle. They left weapons of war. Let's bring them back. What about the spices? Take the spices. Take it all. We won. It's ours now. So that's another way you
Good.
can think of spoil. And that's what they did, actually. They destroyed tents, took cattle, took sheep, camels, brought it all back to Jerusalem, including other stuff that might have been part of the spoil. Let me go to chapter 15. So for verses 1 and 2 of chapter 15, it just talks about the Spirit of God going to Azariah, son of Oded. Oded sounds familiar, but anyways, the
Because it
Spirit
sounds
going
like
in the
Obed.
that's I almost said it too. Man, I almost
Hmm.
said it. But the Spirit going in Azariah and Azariah talking to Asah. These are words from the Lord to Azariah to Asah. The message for to Asah, telling Asah that, hey, hear me, you and Judah and Benjamin, that God is with you, and if you continue to seek Him, then he'll be with you, he'll find you. But if you turn away from Him, forsake Him, in other words, then the Lord's going to turn His back on you too, forsake you, and that's it. That's all I got.
All right, good. Now, before we continue, Whitney, do you know where he got the Gerar that we're talking about? Do you know where that information is coming from?
No.
Oh, okay. All right. Chris, well, actually, Whitney, do you have an iPhone or Android phone?
Android.
Okay. Chris, after Bible study, if you don't mind sending her the app. So what we have and why this is coming up, we have a app that we use that has not just the Bible in it, but it has the dictionary built into the Bible. So as you're reading, and I'll put a picture on screen so you can see basically what he's looking at and what we see when we're looking at it. So I'll put it on the screen. So on the app that you'll will have you be able to take care of it later. On 14 and 15, this is from chapter 14. Those blue numbers are the dictionary for the Bible. So you can look at the original word and everything while you're actually reading. So like for the word smote, I'm gonna do one more screenshot so you can see that. So as we go to read, like in verse 15, where it says they smote, this is what happens when you click on the number next to the word smote. You have how it looked in the original writing. The transliteration would be like if you wrote the way it sounds in English, and then the phonetic is how you're supposed to pronounce it from the original. So now, as you'll scroll down, BDB is just one dictionary, but we start with the Strong's because the Strong's Concordance is the original dictionary from the Bible. But as you can see in the phonetic, naka, that's the original word. Now, sometimes if there's an English word already for it, they'll use the Hebrew and we'll just go with the English. But it means to strike, to smite, and it's the same thing when it goes to Strong's Concordance. So whenever we're talking about phonetic or we're talking about go to the dictionary to see how to pronounce it, that's where we're going to is where it says the phonetic right there. That'll let you know how to pronounce the word in the original language. So I'll have Chris either send you the app or I can have you give me your number and I can send you the app. Either way, this is a very strong and helpful tool so that when you're doing the study, you're not just reading and hoping that the translation is right. You can literally go to the dictionary and see what it meant and all the possibilities and context it meant in its original language. So that whenever you hear us say it, that's what we're talking about. All
Okay.
right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now then, Second Chronicles chapter 15, verse 3 through 7. I'll give everybody a second. All right. Now for a long season, Israel hath been without the true God, and without a teaching priest, and without law. But when they in their trouble did turn unto the Lord God of Israel, and sought him, he was found of them. And in those times there was no peace to him that went out, nor to him that came in, but great vexations were upon all the inhabitants of the countries. And nation was destroyed of nation, and city of city. For God did vex them with all adversity. Be ye strong, therefore, and let not your hands be weak, for your work shall be rewarded. So, in this section, we have a continuation from him speaking in the last section, the 15. But he's bringing up a very important point to the children of Israel. There was a long time where the children of Israel, they were not following the true God. They were doing their own thing. And during that time, they didn't have a teaching priest. They weren't following the law. And so in that time, when they had turned to the Lord God and sought him, he was found of them. But in those times, there wasn't any peace going out. Now, this is something that we can take as a lesson in our own lives today. We see this all the time when it comes to people who claim that they're following God but are truly not. In a multitude of different churches, multitude of different religions, they pray to God, asking God for understanding or help in something, and they get no response. Or they go about their business trying to do things in a certain way that goes against what God has required. And then they wonder why everything is filled up in sin and problems. The fact of the matter is, yeah, we may have problems in this life regardless if we're following God, but you are guaranteed to have more problems if you are halfway following God. And so when this situation happened, he points out that there was no peace at all. And to whether anybody was leaving or they were coming in. And then it says, but great vexations. Now, I've given the answer to this before, but I want to see if you remember. I'll start with Thomas. Do you remember what a vexation is?
No.
All right. Charles?
No, I had to go to the Strong's.
Okay. So simplified, a vexation is something that it makes you, it's whatever is being used to stress you out or give you problems in life. As a good example for it, it's like it's something that's so bad or so wrong that it completely envelops your mind in stress or pain. Like a person, what would be a good example? Uh, okay, let's say I was going and looking for my first house. Never owned one before, and I'm looking for my first house. And I go to not one house, not two houses, not three houses. I go to 17 different houses. And every time it seems to seem good, something falls through on the contract. They didn't check the plumbing. There's something off with their money. My credit is good, my money is good, but they don't accept cash. And I took everything out the bank, or my bank doesn't let me do large payments. So after a while, that situation, when I'm sitting there trying to find a house, it's going to have me feeling like I'm stressing, like I'm trying to find a house. There's always a problem. There's always this, there's always that. That emotion that I would feel in that example, that is me being vexed. So it's like so far gone, so extreme that it completely stresses not just me out, but to the core of my soul. That's vexed as a good example of it. So great vexations were upon all the inhabitants of the countries. That means that basically everyone in the countries, they were having so many problems that they were stressed out to their core. Every part of their being was focused and enveloped in the stress or in the problems. And then you can see why. As he pointed out in 6, nation was destroyed by nation and city of city. Imagine if you're sitting here and you're in Henderson, Nevada, and you have watched over the last few years Las Vegas, the city area, get completely destroyed. Boulder City get completely destroyed. Green Valley get completely, what technically Henderson, but we know it's not. But Green Valley technically, and it was completely destroyed. Even you see Baker, not Baker, you see Prim Valley completely destroyed. If you're living in Henderson while you're seeing all these different areas around you being completely destroyed, you're going to be thinking about whether or not it's your time. The same thing could happen when we lose loved ones. The same thing can happen when we lose jobs. The same thing can happen when we lose friendships. Like anything where you're having a negative impact. Maybe you're sick, maybe you're like Thomas. I guarantee you that with the amount of times you've had problems with the air or whether it's your allergy or whatever it is, where you can't breathe or speak right, that you feel when it comes up, you almost feel anxiety. It's not at the level of anxiety, but it's like a stress that feels like you feel it in your core. Like, man, not again. Am I right or wrong? Thomas?
Yeah, it'd be like that.
Yeah. So, in that situation, we have to keep that in mind. So, that's the example that he's given. That's how we can understand that. That's what vexing is. But then he goes into it in verse 7 to say, be ye strong, therefore. Now, Charles, what does therefore mean?
Oh, I don't remember at the moment.
Y'all remember? Slacker.
I know.
I'm just, I'm just playing. Thomas, do you remember what therefore means in the Bible?
Maybe like because of or something like that.
Close. Because of, go ahead, Charles.
Because of what I just said.
Exactly. Because of what was just said, this is what's being said now. So anytime you see the word therefore, that's how it's used in the Bible. So when he says, be ye strong, therefore, he's saying you need to be strong because of all those things that took place that I'm reminding you of. The vexations, the nations being destroyed, the time without priest, without God, without, you need to be strong, therefore, and let not your hands be weak. Now, Charles, and then Thomas second. What is the difference between saying to be strong and then saying, let not your hands be weak? Why say both of them? What's the difference between the two?
Um, in the sense of when he uses or when it's be strong, I think when you add the and let not your hands be weak, isn't that like you're talking about it from a broad sense of not just be strong physically, but mentally, spiritually, and all of that?
Exactly. Be strong is a mental, spiritual, it's a mentality thing. Be steady. Steady yourself. Stand firm in what you're trying to do. And then he says, and let not your hands be weak. Well, let not your hands be weak. That's not talking about generic strength anymore. What type of strength is that talking about, Thomas?
Like when, for instance, you're fasting, like not to show it.
Exactly. But more generic. That was too specific. But you got the right idea. It's endurance. If you're fasting and if you're trying not to let your hands be weak, or the emphasis of what that means, then you're going to have a smile on your face. Nobody would know that you were fasting. In the same token of building a house, if you're letting your hands be strong, then let's say one day you felt sick the night before. Maybe you coughed up something, but you're not letting your hands be weak, and that emphasis on that subject. Then what you're doing is you're going into work that next day, but you're working so hard and you're doing so much good effort, nobody even knew you were sick. They have no idea. So then back to Charles. Why would he have to bring that up in reference of the rest of the verses of this section? And the answer is in the same verse. Just a little hint.
Well, let me read the last part of it. For your work shall be rewarded.
Mm-hmm.
Even though he brought up the things he brought up, the message from God, just keeping it in mind. If you do those things, that there'll be I don't want to reread to re-explain it, but there's a reward for those works when you stay strong you stay strong mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and physically.
No, but good try.
Okay.
That wasn't a bad guess, but good try, but no. Thomas?
Mine wouldn't be as far off from Chris's. I was thinking along the lines of the same thing. I mean, not Chris, but Charles.
I know both their names start with a C and an H, but the rest is different. So, anyways, yeah, I've done that before. So, anyways, yeah, it's close, but it's not quite. What you didn't take into account is the rest of the context. Charles, was he bringing up all the good things that will come from following God?
No, they started off with the bad.
Hey, started off with bad. So when he brings up telling them to be strong after that, what is he actually emphasizing in the context? He's not emphasizing that you're going to be rewarded for doing the right thing. What he's emphasizing is no matter what kind of work you do, you're going to be rewarded for that. So that would include if you are doing some scandalous, you are doing some crazy, you are doing some evil thing, you will be rewarded for that too. It just won't be a good reward. That's going to be a reward you really don't want. So when he's pointing this out to be strong and not let your hands be weak, it's actually more so serving as a warning to them than it is a teaching of blessing. And we have that same thing today. Knowing the fact, as Jesus said, that our life will be hard, if you go into this situation with being Christian or trying to follow, and you have some tough times, and you don't have a foundation of standing firm and following, then what's going to happen to you is you're going to turn away from God when things get bad. Matter of fact, for some people, they'll turn away from God at the smallest time of hindrance. I've seen people turn away from God because of a requirement to even give God an hour a day out of 24 hours. And that's a little difficult, but I've seen people even turn away from God because as something smaller because they had to get rid of a TV show that they love to watch or a song that they like to listen to. Stuff that, like, there's so much shows, there's so much music out there that it's really not a big deal at all or something really struggling to get rid of them. So let alone for the ones that are like that, also the ones that are not ready for the harsh times. What if everybody you ever were close to is actually living in sin and not only doesn't believe in it, but disrespects the faith? But these are people you grow up with in this example. Then in that example, you have to have the strength of character and the strength of will to say, you know what? I'm going to follow God regardless. And to show as extreme as the Bible shows in relation to this, what did Jesus say? Let's see if you remember it, Charles and then Thomas. Let's see if you remember it. Who can, either of you can remember it? What did Jesus say when it came to, and I've quoted many times, if your family is against it? If your family's against, either against God or against you living for God, what does it say, or what have I brought up that is in the Bible that it shows about that?
Didn't it talk about making sure you put God above your family
We
and your
don't do
friends and
idols,
all of that?
Charles.
Yeah, yeah. To put God over your friends and your family, and that they're not really your friend and your family at that point. If you have to choose between God and your family friends.
It does, but I'm looking for something more specific. Like
Okay.
what? It's a quote almost. It's almost a direct quote. But you are right about the concept, Thomas.
Treat him like an infidel.
No, no, that's about not being able to pay your bills.
Oh,
But
true, true. My bad, my bad.
it's all good. So, two things were said by Jesus about this specific subject. One, he said, if anyone loves his mother or father or sister or brother more than me, then they are unworthy of me. That brings a heavy toll. That means if you have loved ones, no matter who they could be your daughter, they could be your son, they could be your father, they could be your mother, they could be your cousin, your brother, your sister, doesn't matter. They could be the closest one to you in this world. You cannot put them above God. So let's say, for example, your your daughter, you have a daughter, and your daughter is trying to get married to a woman, and you love your daughter. She's your special little girl. She's your everything growing up, raising her the whole nine. You have to be willing to make that decision, not only to not approve of the wedding, you can't show up there. You have to reject it entirely. Because if you don't, you're showing approval of it through your actions. So, putting that, and then in the part where Charles brought up the other concept, Jesus had said when the Pharisees or someone around him had said, your mom and the your brethren, talking about the apostles, are outside. And he said, who is my mother or my brother, except they that do the will of my Father? So in God's eyes, if somebody is rejecting God, then they are not part of your family in God's eyes. God's eyes, our family are the ones that follow. So if we don't take, just as with them, the children of Israel in 7, if we can't be strong and let our work or our efforts show the faith that we have, that's going to be rewarded too, just not in the way we like. So, with all that being said, does anybody have any comments or any questions as we go to the final section today? Now would be the time to raise your hand. All right, then, Charles, go ahead with the final section. Don't forget to unmute, though. Okay, there you go.
Mhm. I'll be reading Second Chronicles chapter 15, verses 8 and 9. I'm going to give it a couple seconds. Verse 8. And when Asa heard these words and the prophecy of Oded the prophet, he took courage and put away the abominable idols out of all the land of Judah and Benjamin, and out of the cities which he had taken from Mount Ephraim, and renewed the altar of the Lord that was before the porch of the Lord. And he gathered all Judah and Benjamin and the strangers with them out of Ephraim and Manasseh and out of Simeon, for they fell to him out of Israel in abundance when they saw that the Lord his God was with him. So with verse 8, we talked about this in the last study, and I had brought it up in one of the other chapters in First Kings, where we in First Kings it brought up like detailed how he got rid of all kinds of different idols of different gods, different, anything that represent any idols, any images, even to the point where he got rid of he didn't kill this person, but he got rid of a particular family member and their idols, all the things that they were worshiping. So I need to add that, he brought up that he got brave, took courage, and got rid of the stuff and brought back the altar of the Lord that was before the porch of the Lord. Now, when it says the porch of the Lord, are we still talking about that porch from Solomon's temple?
Yeah, good guess. Yes.
Okay. Yes. That because that's the only anytime we talk about a porch in like any of these chapters we've been getting into, it was Solomon's temple when we got
Yeah.
into that. So he's restoring the altar over there. But then in verse 9, he gathered Judah, Benjamin, and strangers out of Ephraim, Manasseh, and Simeon. Now, before I keep going, when it talks about the strangers, we should be still talking about the same ones that I'm going to bring up. Yeah, we're talking about the same. So when we're bringing up when it brings up the strangers out of Ephraim, Manasseh, Simeon, these are people that are not of the children of Israel, that came from a whole different nation, a whole different land entirely, and they're either at Manasseh, they're at Ephraim, they're at Simeon. These are also people that they can't just be in whichever land it is, Judah, Benjamin, any of those tribes. They can't be on that land without following the rules that were in place, God's rules specifically. Um, and those strangers went to Benjamin and Judah. Let me reread something one more time. They fell to him out of Israel in abundance. Also, they fell to him. So, in other words, Matt, when it brings up for they fell to him out of Israel in abundance, I don't want to add into anything.
Well, what do you think it means in the context?
Based out of the context, it's like the losers of a battle. Well, based off of everything we've been reading about Assad just being successful in destroying these people, destroying that people, winning this, winning that, then the spoils we read about previously. This looks like a group
Well,
of strangers
here's
that
the
are.
part where you would be adding. Did it say that they were part of the spoils, or did it say that they just fell to him?
No, it just says that they fell to him. It didn't say it was part of the spoil.
Exactly. It doesn't necessarily need to be related to the war. We got to make sure we don't add something that's not there. When he says, and he gathered all Judah and Benjamin and the strangers with them out of Ephraim and Manasseh and out of Simeon, for they fell to him out of Israel in abundance. So a bunch of them became under his control,
Which
or
I
he
got to
was the
bring
one
us.
over them.
It's interesting that they did that, considering, and it brought up when they saw that the Lord his God was with them. So even people that are not from the children of Israel, they see what God has done for Benjamin and Judah, and they want to be a part of it.
Well,
We're
and
not a
here's the
part of it.
thing.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead and finish. I'll say it afterwards. I'm almost
Oh, no,
about
that's
to.
all I was gonna say was, hey, we're not a part of this nation. We're not a part of this. We came from a different God, but we want to be a part of what your God is doing. Even though we came from representing and worshiping a whole different God, we want to be a part of this one here.
Exactly. See, here's the thing that's interesting about it when you look back at the past and the situations. There were always people that understood that he was the one true God. The only reason we have people that today look at it differently is because we don't have people today looking at all the facts and everything. We have people who are just falling in line with whatever the TV tells them. So with that in mind, with that in mind, hold on one second.
I don't know why I thought my connection was making you sound. I'm in my head thinking, is the connection making me think he repeated himself? Oh, you. Oh no, I think he might. It might be on the call.
No, it's not a call. Some idiot backing up has his like dang near high beam backing up on straight on my eyes. Like his backup light was way too bright and it was blinding. He was walking over. So I was like, can you just shut off that light? But anyways, thank you. With that in mind, back to what I was saying. Today is different because we have people who don't look into anything. We have an absolute more amount of information accessible to everybody than ever before. Than ever before. Yet, we have some of the dumbest people in the world more than ever before. And the reason is because of the fact that they are sitting here not looking into anything. But imagine being there in the Bible time where you see these miracles happening. You're seeing all of that take place. You don't have a choice but to see it. So there's going to be a whole bunch of people who are wanting to follow. But that goes into the same subject as well. That with the fact that there's so much evidence that there are people will follow, it also means that no matter what evidence you give somebody, it doesn't mean they're going to follow. They may do their own thing. They may do what they want. So always keep in mind the same lesson that can be taken from this as well. You can't make people want to follow God. If somebody is going to want to follow God, they will follow. All you can do is take your time and give them the information. If you do try to force it on them, instead of pushing them to God, you'll end up pushing them away from God. So our jobs as Christians in relation to this verse is the same thing today as it is for them there. Just follow what God has given us to do. Now we have some rules that are the same in the New Testament, some that are different, but that concept is still the same. It ain't my job to make you Christian. It ain't your job to make me Christian. It ain't our job to make the world Christian. Our job is to do everything in our power to follow what the word says. And if somebody wants to know, to give them the opportunity to know God, but never to force the issue, never to force somebody to follow, because that's not how it works. All right. Now, with all that in mind, does anybody have any comments or any questions before we pray it out? All right. Then Charles, go ahead and pray us out.
I got you. Everybody, go ahead and bow your heads. Father, thank you for showing us some of the things and reminders of Asah's journey and working to follow your will and your way. Now, after the Bible study, I pray that if we have the time to look into some other things that it talked about with Asah's journey, some from First Kings, or look into any other detail, or not just details in the Bible, but we could look up like one small detail on Google. If we can do a quick Google search to prove what you've already done, what we've already read in the Bible, the proof that still out there in the world, from the Sodom and Gomorrah to the Reed Sea. And also that everybody get some good rest tonight. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Now, before everybody goes, just a heads up for today's listening for the Bible. If you're following along, you will be listening through to Psalm chapter 43. So through Psalm 43, which is a massive jump from Psalm 16, but that just goes to show you how short the book of Psalms, a lot of these Psalms are. So you'll finish chapter 43 with your listening today. And Chris, do you mind unmuting real quick? And Whitney, do you mind unmuting real quick?
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. So Chris, do you know how to send the app so that you can get Whitney the app for the Bible so she can have that?
Yes, sir. I'll send both
Okay.
of them, by the way.
Oh, good, good, good. Yeah. So make sure Whitney, when you're on the U version Bible app, make sure it's on the King James because it tends to start on different ones. And then Chris,
Okay.
just make sure to help her walk her through it, how to work it, and make sure she has dictionaries. And Whitney, as a little thing, I tell everybody, when you're going to get the understanding of a word, the dictionary for the Bible is the Strong's. That's true. But the very first thing you always want to do is think about how the context, what it shows. Then the second thing, if you don't get it from the context, look at the Strong's Concordance because that's the dictionary for the Bible originally. But you want to think about it also again within the context and how it matches. And then the third thing, if you still need help, the BDB is a good dictionary as an additive tool, but not by itself. Because there are times where in that dictionary, it's not giving you a dictionary at all, it's just giving you information. So never jump to BDB, never jump to the Strong's Concordance. Always go with this order to make sure we got accurate context. The Bible first, see if you the context, then the Strong's Concordance with the context, then the BDB with the Strong's Concordance and with the context. And then lastly, if you still can't figure it out, look for the phrasing or the word on Google. But it's a dead last because their definitions change. Like they even changed the definition of a woman for the transgender stuff. And so it fluctuates and it's not based on today. Like one big example, Whitney, do you know what a unicorn is?
Yeah.
All right. What is a unicorn?
Like a unicorn, how we know of the animal?
Yeah, like what do you think of when you think of a unicorn?
Like basically a mystical or a mythical creature, like a
What does
horse.
it look? Yeah, okay. That's not what a unicorn is in the Bible.
Right.
So the biblical word for unicorn comes from the Old English word unicornus, which is a rhino with one horn. That's the origin of the word unicorn. Then it
Yeah,
became a horse later.
I believe I know what a unicorn is in the Bible. Yeah.
Okay. Well, the reason I was bringing that up is as an example of how if you get the dictionary straight from the internet instead of starting with the Bible's dictionary first, you'll have words pop up that mean completely different than what it means in the Bible. So always start with the context, then the Bible's dictionaries, then as a last resort, you go to the internet, but that's a dead last resort. So, Chris, you'll help her get that. And then you'll be, whenever we say phonetic, you'll be able to see what we're seeing when you click on it, and he'll help you with that. All right. Now, with all that being said, everybody have a wonderful night.